I need you to picture something. You are standing in a football stadium in Toamasina, Madagascar. It is October 31st, 2002, Halloween. The sun is hanging low over the Indian Ocean a few miles east, and the air is thick and warm the way it always is on this island. And you have paid money, real money, money you earned, money that matters, to watch a professional football match. The referee blows the whistle. The home team kicks off, and then something happens that you will spend the rest of your life trying to explain to people who will never believe you. The player who takes the kickoff doesn't pass forward. He turns around. He dribbles the ball backward, past his own midfield, past his own defenders, past his own goalkeeper, and calmly rolls it into his own net. 1-0. You blink. You look at the person next to you. They look back. Neither of you says anything because neither of you has a word for what just happened. The teams line up again, center circle, kick off, and the same player, or maybe a different one, you can't tell anymore, does exactly the same thing, takes the ball, turns around, walks it into his own goal. 2-0. This happens again, and again, and again, and again, for 90 minutes, without stopping, without interruption, without a single person on the pitch making any attempt to play actual football. By the time the referee blows the final whistle, the scoreboard reads 149-0. 149-0, the highest scoreline in the recorded history of professional football. A Guinness World Record that will almost certainly never be broken. And every single goal, all 149 of them, was scored by the same team, into their own net, on purpose. This is not a rumor. This is not an urban legend. This is not something someone made up on the internet. This happened. To understand why 11 professional footballers spent 90 minutes deliberately destroying themselves, you have to understand what was taken from them the week before. So Les Mirnes, known as SOE, were the defending champions of Madagascar. Not a pub team, not a group of amateurs who wandered onto a pitch for a laugh. The defending national champions. A club that had represented Madagascar in the African Champions League, that had flown to Angola and beaten Petro Atletico, one of the most powerful clubs in African football, on penalties in their own stadium, in front of their own fans. SOE had walked into one of the most hostile environments in continental football and won. That's who they were. Their captain, Mamasoa Razafindra Koto, was also the captain of the Madagascar national team. Their coach, Zaka Bayrat Sarazaka, was one of the most experienced managers on the island. Their squad was deep, talented, battle-tested. They were not a team that lost. They were a team that expected to win everything because they usually did. The 2002 Malagasy Championship was structured as a round-robin playoff. 4 teams, 6 matches each, play everyone twice. Most points wins the title. Simple and brutal. Going into the penultimate round of fixtures, SOE were still alive, still in the title race, still defending their crown. They needed a win against DSA Antananarivo to keep their destiny in their own hands. The match was tight, controlled, tense. The kind of game where every tackle matters and every decision from the referee carries the weight of an entire season. The score was level deep into stoppage time. And then the referee, Benjamina Razafin Salama, pointed to the penalty spot. A penalty for DSA in the final minutes in a match that would decide the championship. SOE's players surrounded the referee. They screamed. They argued. They begged. The penalty was, in their eyes, a fabrication, a decision so wrong, so conveniently timed, so perfectly designed to benefit their rivals, that the only explanation was corruption. DSA scored the penalty. The match ended in a draw. And because of the way the points table worked, that draw handed the championship to SOE's arch-rivals, AS Adema. The title was decided. SOE could no longer win it, no matter what happened in the final game. The defending champions had been dethroned, not by a better team, not by a better performance, by a referee's hand pointing at a spot on the grass in the 90th minute. The final match of the season was SOE versus Adema. It was now mathematically meaningless. Adema were already champions. SOE could not catch them. The game existed only because the schedule said it had to. And so SOE's coach, Zaka Bey, made a decision. A decision that was equal parts genius, madness, fury, and self-destruction. A decision that would end careers, destroy a football club, and create the most talked about match in the history of the sport. If the result doesn't matter, he reasoned, then the match is no longer a sporting contest. It is a stage. And if it is a stage, then SOE would use it to perform the most public, most visible, most impossible to ignore protest that Malagasy football had ever seen. They would score as many own goals as physically possible. The whistle blew, SOE kicked off, and the ball went backward. The first own goal took about 20 seconds. A midfielder collected the kickoff, turned, jogged toward his own goal, and tapped the ball gently past the goalkeeper, his own goalkeeper, who stepped aside without moving a muscle to stop it. The Adema players looked at each other. A few of them laughed nervously. Nobody on either side had been told what was about to happen except the SOE squad. The second own goal was faster. Kickoff, turn, jog, finish. 15 seconds this time. By the fifth own goal, Adema's players had stopped pretending to play. They walked to the center of the pitch, folded their arms, and watched. There was nothing in the rulebook that required them to participate in whatever this was. So they didn't. By the 10th own goal, the crowd had gone quiet, not the shocked silence of the Maracanazo, a different kind of silence, the baffled, uncomfortable silence of people who have paid money to watch a professional sporting event and are instead watching performance art that they didn't ask for and don't understand. By the 20th own goal, some fans started leaving. By the 30th, spectators were lining up at the ticket booths demanding refunds. By the 50th, the stadium was half empty. By the 100th, the few fans who remained were watching not out of enjoyment or anger or even curiosity, but out of the same compulsion that makes people slow down at car accidents. They couldn't look away. They didn't want to watch, but they also couldn't leave without knowing the final number. The final number was 149. One own goal every 36 seconds for 90 minutes. A rhythm. A metronome of self-destruction ticking away in the Malagasy heat, while the opposing team stood in the center circle doing absolutely nothing, and a referee allowed it to continue because there was no rule. Not a single line in the entire FIFA rulebook. That said, a team couldn't score against themselves as many times as they wanted. The previous world record for the highest scoreline in professional football was 36 in Euro, set in 1885 by Arbroath against Bon Accord in the Scottish Cup. That record had stood for 117 years. SOE broke it before the 22nd minute, and then they kept going for another 68 minutes, because the point was never the record. The point was the rage. After the final whistle, the fallout was immediate and merciless. The Malagasy Football Federation, the FMF, suspended SOE's coach Zaka Bey for 3 years. 4 players were banned for the rest of the season and prohibited from entering any stadium in the country during their suspension. The 4 included Mamasoa Razafindrakoto, the captain of the national team, the most prominent footballer in Madagascar, a man who had represented his country on the international stage with pride and distinction. His name would now be associated with one thing for the rest of his career: 149 own goals. The FMF voided all of SOE's results from the entire 2002 season. Every match they had played, every goal they had scored, every point they had earned, erased, as though the defending champions had never existed that year. And the referee, Benjamina Razafin Salama, the man whose penalty decision had triggered the entire chain of events, the man whose raised arm in the 90th minute had set fire to a football club, ended careers, and produced the most absurd scoreline in the history of sport. He was not punished. The FMF stated that the situation in the 149-0 match was beyond his control. The man who started the fire walked away clean. The people who burned in it lost everything. SOE never recovered. The suspensions gutted their squad. The voided season destroyed their competitive standing. The shame, and not of the protest itself, but of the attention it brought, the international headlines, the laughter from across the world, poisoned the club's reputation in ways that no amount of time could repair. They limped through the next few seasons. Players left. Sponsors disappeared. The crowds that once filled the stands to watch the defending champions compete at the highest level in Malagasy football simply stopped coming. In 2006, 4 years after the 149-0 match, AS Adema was dissolved. The club ceased to exist. The defending champions of Madagascar, the team that had competed in the African Champions League, the team that had beaten Petro Atletico on penalties in Angola, gone, erased from football entirely. Their rivals, Adema, went on to win the championship 4 times. They are still listed in the record books as the winners of the 2002 season. The easiest title in the history of sport, won without kicking a ball in the final match. There is a detail from this match that nobody talks about, and it is the detail that haunts me most. Somewhere around the 60th or 70th own goal, nobody is sure of the exact moment because, understandably, people had stopped counting by then. 2 SOE players started arguing with each other on the pitch, not about whether to stop, not about whether the protest had gone far enough. They were arguing about whose turn it was to score the next own goal. Think about that. They had been doing this for an hour. They had broken the world record 40 minutes ago. The stadium was nearly empty. The opposing team was literally standing still, and 2 professional footballers were having a genuine argument, a heated, finger-pointing, push-and-shove argument about who got to kick the ball into their own net next. That is what rage does. It stops being a decision and becomes a machine. It develops its own momentum, its own logic, its own internal hierarchy. The protest had started as a calculated act of defiance. By the 60th minute, it had become something else entirely. An exercise in collective madness, a feedback loop of anger and humiliation that nobody could stop because nobody wanted to be the first person to stop. The players weren't protesting anymore. They were performing their own funeral. Here is what the 149-0 match tells us about football, if we're willing to listen. It tells us that the game is held together by consent, not by rules, not by referees, not by FIFA or confederations or governing bodies. By the agreement, unspoken, invisible, taken for granted every single time 2 teams walk onto a pitch, that both sides are going to try to win. The moment that agreement breaks, the game breaks with it. There is no football without the mutual understanding that the ball is supposed to go into the other team's net. Remove that understanding, and what remains isn't sport. It's theater. It's noise. It's 11 men walking in circles, kicking a ball backward, while the world watches in silence. Every match you've ever watched, every World Cup final, every Premier League weekend, every Sunday League kickabout in a park, depends on both teams agreeing to play. We never think about that agreement because it has almost never been broken. Almost. On October 31st, 2002, in a stadium in Toamasina, on an island in the Indian Ocean, 11 men decided they were done agreeing, and for 90 minutes, professional football ceased to exist. 149-0. Every goal an own goal, every goal a middle finger pointed at the system that broke them. And then the final whistle blew, and the system punished them for it, and the system survived, and the club didn't. That is the story.